Good morning, everyone. I'm Kevin Allen, and I'm joined by my usual broadcast partner, former NHL defenseman Tom Laidlaw, who played 11 seasons with the New York Rangers and Los Angeles Kings. This is the Laidlaw and Allen Report. We come to you twice a week, talk all things hockey, and lots to talk about. And it's kind of one of your favorite subjects now because, you turned Matt Duchene into a player in Nashville.
Yeah. There you go.
And now Nashville, they have got to be the number one surprise of this season.
I think you're right in using the word surprise. Sorry to interrupt, Kevin, but in some ways, it's also not a surprise because based on their talent level, that's where they should have been.
Really? See, because I don't see that they're all that talented. I mean, I love Yossi.
Yeah.
And Ekholm's a very good player, but all of a sudden Carrier, who I don't think a lot of people knew anything about, is sort of the new Ryan Ellis.
Yeah.
Two guys, Matt Duchene and Ryan Johansson, two guys that you've criticized for their lack of, I hate to say effort, but, they weren't living up to expectations.
Absolutely.
And then, other than Forsberg, like, who do you have on that team that you're thinking, boy, I got to have him on my team?
Yeah, but like you said before, they're that big team, that big, heavy team that's playing hard like that too, right?
Yeah, but they haven't played like that recently. Like it's only this season that we're seeing that.
Totally.
So
I think that's the difference, right? Because when you mentioned when it came in Detroit, and I really hadn't watched them that much, and then it came into New York and they played that way, and it's like, that's a playoff hockey team, right? That's why they're winning. Like they're playing that team game.
Yeah. And I think the other guy too, I think there's two MVPs. It's like co-MVPs. And believe it or not, one of them is not Matt Duchene. I think the co-MVPs are Saros.
Yep.
UC Saros, the goalkeeper, and John Hines, the coach. I think he's got everybody buying in. And that's not always easy to do. He's got to be salesman of the year for getting Matt Duchene to, buy into this.
No kidding. Because he's got a long-term contract. If he's just motivated by money, he really doesn't have a lot of motivation. He's got the contract there. There's nothing to do about that. So he probably I'm hoping he got to his pride to say, listen, you're just not getting everything out of your career that you should be getting. So I hope that's the case. Yeah,
and they just beat last night the best team percentage-wise in the West. In the Colorado Avalanche, and nobody, people sort of lost track of the Avalanche because they had played fewer games than everyone, so they weren't really up in the standings because standings are based on points and not winning percentage. But going into last night, I don't know what it is now, but the Colorado Avalanche had the number one winning percentage in the Western Conference.
Oh, they did. I knew they were up there high. I didn't know it was
they were the best.
They're a good team, man. They're good offensively. Oh man.
Yeah. So, it was a quality game last night, and you alluded to it when we started this broadcast too. Like the Nashville is set up to be a good playoff team because they're hard to play against.
Yep.
So,
totally.
Yeah.
I agree totally. Hey, people are asking a lot about Edmonton and Evander Kane. Ron James is asking, is that going to happen? Susan Brooks. And Susan brings up a good point here. And I can see why. Hold on, I'll get rid of this. I can see why like Kenny Holland, who a friend of both of ours and has done a great job in the past in Detroit and is now the GM in Edmonton. I can see why he's interested in Kane, or at least looking at Kane. And I saw his quotes, and I think it's a good quote too. He said, listen, I'm the general manager of the Edmonton Oilers. I have to do everything possible, at least investigate everything possible that can help this hockey team. So I think a lot of people are criticizing his supposed interest in Kane because of his past more off-ice activities. But I think he's right. You got to look. You got to do your homework. If you can get this guy on a cheap contract, short term, see what happens. But I don't think that's. I mean, to me, the problem that Edmonton has had is the culture there. They've got those talented top end guys, but it doesn't seem like there's a culture of winning, of the sacrifice, of the team play. Now you're bringing in a guy he's proven he isn't a team player. He's proven he's anything but. So,
at least with his off the ice. But we have seen examples, more so in yesteryear than modern times, of players who lived hard off the ice, did a lot of things that their teams didn't appreciate off the ice, but when the game was on, they played hard. Evander Kane, we've talked about this before, has averaged 25 goals and 100 penalty minutes. And somebody wrote in and said, like, what's the big deal about penalty minutes? It means he committed a foul. Well, the penalty minutes are an indicator.
Right.
And by itself, penalty minutes, you're right, don't mean anything. But usually if you acquire 100 penalty minutes, you're playing pretty hard.
And usually that 100 penalty minute guy will not be getting penalties hooking and holding. It's punching people in the head and elbows.
Yeah, you're playing hard. You earn penalty minutes, and it's like an economic indicator. There are certain things that we look at and say that we know how the economy's going based on how those things. Well, a guy's playing hard a little bit by his penalty minutes, because he's mixing it up. He's involved, he's engaged.
I wonder if Kane can play goal, because don't they need a goaltender more than anything?
Yeah, but the one thing I would say about all that is, Susan, as always, is right about that they also need defensive help. But getting Evander Kane, if they get him for, the rumor is he's going to sign for under $1 million. Right. So, you have to take someone off who's probably going to earn less than $1 million. You don't really change your cap outlook. You could bring in Evander Kane, and essentially, with your cap, you can be exactly where you were 10 minutes before. Yeah, sure. Because it's going to be one low-level salary out and one low-level salary in. So, right now, people are saying they really don't have any cap space to make any moves, right. But they can make moves of just one low-price player for another.
Yeah.
So.
And we talked about this before the show. Here's and I may be wrong on this. I haven't been an agent for a while, but I know with the new CBA, I'm pretty sure it was that you cannot tear up an existing contract and renegotiate it. You can add, like people say, there's an extension. It's really not an extension. It's a new contract. So somebody's contract's expiring before it is totally expired. Now they signed a new contract that it looks like an extension to the old contract, but it really isn't. It's a new contract. So when it comes to Kane, if the NHL Players Association and his agent have filed a grievance, they've got to go through that grievance process. Because what if he wins the grievance? He still has a contract with the San Jose Sharks. So you can't sign a second contract with the Edmonton Oilers or anybody else until you know what happens. Now, maybe they're going to be able to get the grievance done quicker than they thought. And again, listen, it is a collectively bargained agreement. So if both sides agree that, okay, in this case, we'll let an arbitrator negotiate a settlement. If you owe $23 million, let's say, listen, I'll take $10 million and I'll go away. And again, that now is setting a precedent that I don't think that either side wants, but that's my interpretation of it. So I don't know how that contract is going to get done until the arbitration process is taken care of.
Yeah. Well, maybe they feel like they're going to fast track it. Maybe the league thinks, we got this in the bag, that his behavior was so abhorrent that, they have a right to do it. I don't know the answer to that. If I looked at it logically, I would think that the team, if I'm Evander Kane, of course, if I was Evander Kane, I wouldn't be in this position.
No question.
Yeah. But I think I'd want to sign with Tampa Bay. Yeah. And I would sign with Tampa Bay because, they lost a couple of guys that were hard to play against, and they'll be looking for someone like that. Yeah. And he's going to be surrounded by incredible talent there. They're playing with house money in Tampa.
Yeah.
They've won 2 cups in a row. The pressure there to win, people are excited, but I think this is kind of a fun march to the in a quest for the third. I don't think it's a pressure-filled march to the third.
And they've shown that they could turn it on too. They lost 2 games to the Rangers, and you can tell they weren't too happy about that. And then right after that, I think they hammered somebody 7-1 or something. I can't remember, but they've shown that they can still turn. They know how to win, right? They know that they don't have to be the top point getting team in the league during a regular season. It's more what happens in the playoffs, right? So.
Well, and I think we also saw recently when one of your favorite players, Andre Vasilevsky, was out with COVID. Yeah. And you like to point out you discovered him when he was in the KHL. My granddaughter is not happy. I can hear.
She doesn't like Vasilevsky?
Well, apparently she does, and I'm surprised at that because she likes quality goaltending.
But speaking of favorites, hasn't your favorite coach ever, Barry Trotz, gotten COVID twice now? Isn't he back in COVID?
Oh, I don't know. Has he got it a second time? Yeah. Well, it's starting to happen again. And, I pointed this out about 4 weeks ago, and again, people weren't happy that I brought this up. But we're starting to go this second round now of COVID. It's like we've now that I'm aware of. Carter in Pittsburgh has had it twice. The Kaiser has had it twice, and now you're telling me that maybe Barry Trotz has had it twice. So we're going around the horn again. Like it was starting again. Like I saw yesterday. This morning. I was watching, and they had all the experts on, and one expert said, you're likely to get this. It's so transmissive.
Yeah.
And the other one said, yeah, but you don't really want to do that to get it and say, well, I'm going to get it. What I would say is if you go outside your house, you're likely to get it. But if you stay in your house, you're not going to get it. And, you don't want to get this. My son-in-law has it. Had it, and my son had it at the same time. And my son-in-law was miserable, and my son had a mild cold-like thing. So,
I know. I've known some people who their loved ones have had it, and they've been bedridden for days.
Well, and then a lot of people are getting it. It's nothing, and so you don't really know quite what to do on this. And I have noted though that the coaches who are older, seem to have it worse. Like you hear from when the coaches get it that there's I know Mike Sullivan talked about how fatigued he was and he couldn't get out of bed, and we remarked in the media that when Jeff Blashill came on his Zoom call after he came out of COVID, he didn't look so good. He looked beat up. He really did.
Maybe Matt Duchene had it for a couple of years. He had COVID, before anybody else. Maybe he was like the ground zero.
Yeah, that's the same. Well, I saw recently they had did we talk about this? The Russian flu and the common cold. There's a researcher who really knows a lot about all this stuff, and he said there's research now that suggests that maybe the first COVID virus, not 19, but the first COVID virus. May have been the Russian flu, which we all now have antibodies for, but it killed millions in the 1890s.
Right.
And that because we have antibodies, they can sort of think, and they think this was the first in the family of viruses known as the COVID viruses. So, we've had this before. Well, 1890, that was 130 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's when Ron Greshner was born, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Born in 1890.
Yeah, for sure. Can't resist taking that chance.
He's got to be listed, so he's got to chime in too.
Yeah, taking that shot. But anyway, just the point that we were making is that we're going to see this again. Although the difference will be for those who are paying attention.
Yeah.
The COVID protocol now is only 5 days and not 10 days.
Right.
Provided you don't have any, symptoms. Or that sort of thing. So
Susan has asked a good question here before. How long can the NHL postpone games in Canada before the season gets extended into June?
Yeah, no, that Susan always has great questions, and I've been wondering about that myself. Like we keep canceling all these games. Well, at one point we were talking about we were going to start making up these games, and we're adding to the list.
Well, and again, they're more canceling games now because in Canada. Particularly, they're not allowing fans into the stands. So people are saying, the teams are saying, well, we're losing all this money. So if we can delay the games and get it to a point where now we're filling the building again, we're still going to have the games. Now we just get the revenue from having people in the seats.
But there's other games that are getting canceled to sort of make room in the schedule for teams that have had games canceled. Like the Red Wings had a game canceled in Philadelphia because they wanted to use that date to play the Islanders. And Philadelphia just canceled another game as well.
Well, Philly, the way they're playing, should cancel the whole season. Man, that organization, they're going nowhere.
Yeah, that's not looking good there. That's a hard one to figure out too. Obviously, Ryan Ellis' injury has been huge, I think, because he was brought in to make Provorov better. And then he got hurt, so you've lost him, and then Provorov, isn't better.
Right.
And who has played well for them, and now they might trade him is Giroux.
Yeah. Did you see the quotes from Bobby Clark being critical of Ron Hextall and his decisions when he was the general manager there?
No, I did
You know,
not
where,
see
I
that.
can't remember where I saw that. He was really critical saying how many mistakes that Ron Hextall had made. That, in fact, who was it that they wanted? The rest of the scouts wanted McCarr when they drafted Nolan Patrick, and I don't know if Bobby Clark's making that up now or not, but it's we had Bobby Clark's. He's a fiery guy. So when I was in the agent business, I had Damon Lankow as a client, and he was playing for the Philadelphia Flyers, and we were going to arbitration, and I'll never forget this. No. He at the time, I'm sorry, he was with Phoenix at the time. I think he had been with Philly, and the team brought in Bobby Clark to testify on their behalf because they were comparing Damon Lankow to Darcy Tucker, and they wanted Bobby Clark to say that Darcy Tucker was a better player than Damon Lankow. That was what they're building. So that would keep Damon Lankow's salary below Darcy Tucker. When Bobby Clark got up there to testify, he got up there and says, I don't like Darcy Tucker. David Lankow is a better player, which is exactly the opposite of what they wanted to say. And I'll never forget because Cliff Fletcher, Chuck Fletcher's son or father, who Chuck is now the GM in Philadelphia, he's an older white-haired gentleman. His face just turned seriously bright red, and the contrast in his hair, it was the funniest thing. And I actually had a good friend of mine was on the other side, Lawrence Gilman. He was the assistant general manager. He put the whole case together. And I remember looking at his face, and I trying not to laugh because, everybody, the PA's there, the arbitrator, the players and everything. But it was one of the funniest things I've ever seen in an arbitration case because it just was, Bobby Clark was just going to say whatever he wanted to say. He knew what they wanted to say, but he wasn't going to say it. That was it. But I'm surprised that, they would have coached him going into it. But I was kind of surprised when he said that. So
Yeah, that's the thing about, and we know this from watching television, which is where we learn most of our life from watching television. But arbitrations and legal battles in the court are just another form of theater.
Yeah,
because they coach people before they go in. They tell you how to respond, how to answer the questions, how to look for the jury. It's the same thing. You were on reality shows, and I've seen people suggest that they look for particular personalities, like one of this kind. It's like Noah's Ark. You want one person who's going to be confrontational. You want one who'll be meek. You got to have, so that the show, has a lot of contrast. And
what do you think they're looking for from me? What do you think they
combative, comedic relief, competitive.
That's true. That is true. Because it was funny on the show. Every time that the host, Jeff Probst, would ask me a question at Tribal Council, I said, well, I want to win. And then finally, after a while, he asked me a question. I said, well, I want to win. And he goes, every time I ask Tom a question, all he says is he wants to win. So I was like, yeah.
Well, you read this book when you have kids, and now I've got grandkids, and you read a book called The Berenstain Bears. And one of the bear cubs is a little bit bossy and a little bit braggy. Mm-hmm. And that might be Tom Laidlaw, a little bit bossy and a little bit braggy. So
it's very funny because I can't disclose too much, but I was having a very interesting conversation with somebody this morning. We're going to enter into a business agreement together. We had this discussion, and they happen to be the same personality. So we're thinking, okay, can we work together or not? And we get along great, but we need to control that bossiness. Yes.
Yeah. Well, it's what works for you. It's what got you to the NHL. The meek don't inherit the earth, and they don't make the National Hockey League.
That is true. That is very correct. That's very.
You have to. You got to be confident and cocky, and that's how I want my athletes.
Yeah,
definitely. Hockey has a negative connotation, but it doesn't in sports.
Right.
I want a guy that has some bravado.
Yeah, you better believe in yourself. If you're going to go put your neck out there like that, you believe in yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember listening years ago to the great Al Kaline, who became a broadcaster, and they were talking about making a fielding play with the game on the line or important situations. George Kell was in the broadcast booth, and George Kell is also a Hall of Fame third baseman. And George was saying, I just prefer they hit it to someone else when the game was on the line. He said, I was very confident as a batter, but, as a fielder, I thought I was pretty good, but, I had thought there were other guys who were better. And now Kaline said, that's kind of funny, George, because I always wanted the ball hit to me every time, and I thought, wow.
I know. And I think Susan's got a little bit of that cockiness too here. She's firing one across the bow here. She's a big Ranger fan. Are the Islanders still in the NHL? I haven't seen them play in forever. Oh, geez.
Yeah, no, that's
Tough.
well. I mean, it's just crazy. You know, and if what you say is correct too, that now Trotz is out again, well, we're going to go another round with them, and they'll be, you know, it's just nuts how easily transmissible.
Yeah,
this is. You know,
I know we don't know the answer, but just speculating here. Do we get all 82 games in for every team?
Yeah, I think we will. I think it's so important
for
the revenue. Yeah. I think they're going to make it happen.
And it's for all the TV deals and everything too, right?
Yeah, they need this money. Like they need, you know, they need to make it happen. And you know, as we talked about, I think it was on the last show. Aren't they suing
the insurance companies for $1 billion?
Right? Yeah.
So that kind of gives you an idea what the losses have been. There's $1 billion. So
yeah. So a couple other things I want to talk about. There's big news here in my hometown of Detroit that Nicholas Lidstrom is joining Steve Yzerman. And I tried to come up with something. If there's anyone who might have a shot of coming up with someone like this, I bet it's Susan. I was trying to figure out a comparison to have, you know, with Lidstrom and Yzerman, you have two of the top 3 players in Red Wings history that are forming a management team. I mean, that would be, you know, I'm sorry, like it would have to be like Lemieux and Crosby, like being the general manager and assistant manager or something like that.
Two real classy gentlemen too, right? The way they carry themselves, intelligent, confident guys. Yeah.
And I mean, just incredible. And you know, I thought it was just a great quote. And I don't think people sort of viewed it in the terms I did. When Yzerman was talking about Nick Lidstrom, he talked about like Steve Yzerman probably, I mean, he did play when Messier was there. So it's probably, you know, 6 of one, half dozen of the other. But you could certainly make an argument that Yzerman was the most respected captain in the game.
Yep.
And if he wasn't, he was right there with Messier. It was either Messier or Yzerman.
And Joe Sakic happened to be in the category too, right?
Yeah, he was, but he didn't have that. Joe didn't have the edge. You know, late in his career, Yzerman played with an edge. I don't mean he was slashing people like Messier or.
Just another feather in the cap of Susan here. Laidlaw and Gresham.
You know, again, we have Susan for comedic relief here. You know,
she does it all, doesn't she? She's actually getting a little cocky. We got to give her that. I mean, not in a good way.
Well, she has the right to be cocky.
Yeah, that's true.
Anyway, so what Yzerman said when he was talking about Lidstrom is the most respected captain of the game. I used to lean on Nick Lidstrom in the room before I made my decisions. I went and talked to him. You know, he sought his counsel before he made decisions. Well, I mean, that just speaks to, you know, how respected Lidstrom was as well. And so I really like that. The only thing I would say is I thought when they announced that they were going to say that Nick was going to move back to Michigan. Because I know he and his wife had kicked around staying. I mean, they lived here longer than they had lived in Sweden until they moved back. And I thought he would. And look, you can do the job remotely. We all know that. I mean, COVID has kind of shown us that. However, I think to establish yourself as the right-hand man, I think is a lot easier when you're coming into the office with the boss.
And what was his title? Director of Player Personnel? Is that where you're
No, Director of Hockey, Vice President of Hockey Operations. Okay. So, I mean, if you're really going to be like, you can do it on a Zoom call and all that, but I think it's better and easier, and it's easier to cement your place in the hierarchy when you're there.
To be part of the meetings. I'm assuming he's got to be coming over, like when they get together meetings with the scouts.
Yeah, like I mean, I'm sure he'll be for the draft and for the meetings leading up to the draft, and but this job will be whatever he makes of it. So
intelligent viewers, we really do. Classy, intelligent people.
Yeah, that's what I think of all the time when we talk. Tom Chibiargo. So Well, you're going to have to move because I don't think we're going to elect a Republican governor in New York. So.
Yeah. Well, I'm in Connecticut, but I think the same thing. I think the same in Connecticut there. I don't think it's going to be a Republican either.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. For some reason, I connect you with New York. I wonder why that is.
So I can move.
Yeah. So anyway, but I thought this was a really good move. I think he'll be very important, obviously, in the development of European talent and the draft. And
and it says a lot about Steve Eisenman too. And I saw this with Craig Patrick. A lot of the guys are afraid, or not afraid. They're leery to hire somebody that could potentially take their job too, right?
Yeah.
Craig Patrick was great at that. When he went to Pittsburgh, he signed Scotty Bowman and Bob Johnson, right? Two pretty powerful people who could have taken his job. And he put that team together. They ultimately won their cups too. So
yeah. I mean, it's hard to bring in people that have the capability of doing your job, you know. But you got to be a confident man. You got to be a little cocky.
Yes,
you got to have.
Heisman's definitely got that. He's got that little, and I mean, it's a good way. That kind of arrogance to him a little bit. Like, he carries himself in a certain way. He knows what he's doing. Works hard. Yep.
Well, I always use Craig Patrick, who did a tremendous job as a trader, not a trader, but a trader, horse trader. Did a tremendous job as a trader, in his time in Pittsburgh. Think about the Ron Francis deal, Alfie Samuelson. He made a lot of really big deals. But I also think of him in terms of the contrast between when I started covering the league and how GMs operated versus what we do now. And today's on trade deadline, teams all have a war room.
Yeah.
You got the GM sitting at the head of the conference table, and the pro scouts are all gathered around, and there's a lot of discussion about, and then the capologist is there to make sure everything fits in, everything. And it's really a group effort. And it's almost like a cabinet meeting. That's the way they do things. Contrast that to the way Craig Patrick used to operate on trade deadline day is he's get the NHL guide and record book. Okay, he'd get a guide and record book. He'd walk in at his desk and he'd have a legal pad, the guide and record book, and a pen and a paper, and he'd start working the phones. And, and when the guy would offer him something on trade deadline, sometimes you don't know every guy in every farm system. He'd look the guy up in the guide and record book. And,
is that right? I didn't know that with Craig. That's interesting.
Yeah. So, again, obviously he knew all the players in the league. He just wouldn't always know that. But he had that guide and record book to, refresh his memory about how many times the guy had scored 20 goals, or how many penalty minutes he had, or, all those kind of things. But, but the bigger point than the guide and record book was it was a solitary endeavor. Like, maybe they'd call their pro scout and ask him, but for the most part, it was, one guy, not a war room, not a, the way
that is true. Those days are a lot different. And even from the coaching side too, there was obviously the head coach and maybe another coach on the bench. Now, in some cases, you got 4 or 5 coaches on the bench too, right?
Well, I think that's better for coaches because they got someone to blame. I mean, we in Detroit here, the power play has been bad, and they've gone through coaches. Now Tanguay is the power play coach.
Oh.
And, the power play is still bad. I think it's 30th. Right. So at what point do they look at the head coach for the power play? Because he's hiring the guy.
It's interesting. So I'm just thinking too, you got me thinking about this. So LA just hired Bergevin, who just got fired from Montreal, added him to the staff there and the Kings. Now Detroit hires Nick Lidstrom. Is there something to that? I mean, are people realizing, listen, we need to have a bigger staff, or missing something, or is that just a coincidence, you think?
I think it's a coincidence, although, it's pretty standard operating procedure that former general managers get hired by their colleagues in the GM chair. When they don't find a job, they end up consulting.
Right. Kind of keeps them in the game too, right?
Yes. And it's kind of, if not for the grace of God, go I. Pretty soon you're going to be fired as a GM, and you hope someone will give you a place to keep your self active in the game. So.
You know what I love about this time too? It's terrible to say it this way. It's almost a little sick, but right now, what does they call it? Black Monday in the National Football League. It started yesterday, so all the coaches are getting fired, and who's getting hired where. The one I thought was interesting, like in Miami, where that coach did a pretty good job there, and he got fired. I guess they just weren't getting along. They they couldn't play with the same toys or what?
Yeah. Well, that's the way it happens. In Detroit, they fired Jim Caldwell after a 9-7 season, which in Detroit is a really good year.
Yeah.
Because I like to bring it up. One playoff win in my lifetime, and I'll be collecting Social Security in a few months. So it's just that kind of deal. Well, anyway, Caldwell gets fired because they said, we need someone to take it to the next level. Well, since then, they've just had a bunch of miserable seasons. Not 9-7, but they won 2 games this year with Campbell, and before that, Mike Patricia. We had him for a while. And,
he was supposed to be the guy coming from New England. He was coaching with Belichick, so he must be a good coach.
Matt Patricia, I would say, was one of the bigger disappointments that we've had here. So, but
and didn't they hire? I like this guy too, Chris Spielman. Didn't they hire him as like?
I covered Spielman too when I did some football games. We've talked about that. I probably covered more than 100 games for the USA Today. But Spielman, I loved talking to him. He was such a smart guy after the game. So he's involved. He's a consultant or advisor, but not a bring him in once a month and talk to him type of guy, but a guy who's there every day.
I love him. He's a broadcaster. I thought he was fantastic doing the color on the games, like kind of a different perspective.
Yeah. Well, it's funny too. Like, it doesn't always translate. Matt Millen was the GM here, and by all accounts, he was not a good general manager, but he was a heck of a football analyst. Like, I really liked him on the air. He was a good guy too to deal with in the media. I always liked. Did
he pass away? Did he get?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
Or did he? I know he didn't. He had a transplant.
Maybe that's what I was thinking about. Yeah, he had some illness.
I don't know. Maybe he did. It's possible that I missed it. But I know he was certainly he was sick for a long time.
Definitely. So who's going to get fired next? This is terrible to think this way. Who's getting fired next in the National Hockey League?
Well, I don't know. I mean, Dave Tippett got the vote of confidence by Ken Holland. That always used to be a death knell. As soon as they say, he's got my full support, you're usually gone within a week. That's the way it used to be.
Yeah, because they've got to be. And you brought this up before too. Look at Connor McDavid and Draisaitl there. I mean, those guys have got to be saying to themselves, like, how long is this going to go on? Where even if we do make the playoffs, we lose in the first round. We don't have a goaltender now. Why don't we have a goaltender? We haven't put a team together that can win. With those two guys are 2 of the top players in the league every year. So,
well, it's just wasted. You're wasting Connor McDavid and Draisaitl. I mean, but Connor McDavid is not even arguably. He's the most talented player in the game. There's no doubt about that. And yet his team doesn't have a goalie.
Yeah,
like. You really can't even defend that.
I know. So Kenny Holland, who we both think has done a fantastic job in the past, he's got a proven track record with Detroit. He's been there. It's his 3rd season. He's been there now, I think, right?
Yeah.
Kind of wondering, but I guess in fairness, and this is awful to say this for the people of Edmonton, but it's not exactly a place where a lot of players want to go when they're free agents, right? It's like there's other places that are going to offer you the same money. You're not going to Edmonton. You're going to those nicer.
Yeah, and some of it's not their fault. I mean, players don't want to go where you got to plug your cars in the winter. It's cold there. You know what I mean? Like it's.
Some guy's playing in Los Angeles, meets a girl from Los Angeles, gets married to her, and then say, "Oh, honey, we're going to go play in Edmonton."
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, didn't we have that with Pronger?
That's right. Yes, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Definitely.
I mean, it's just not. It's cold. It's just cold in that part of that.
Just where you got so many great cities to play in. Like, even though Phoenix has got a terrible team, I mean, living in Phoenix is nice. Ooh.
Yeah, I'm starting to wonder whether that team is going to make it too. I mean, seriously, I am.
I guess, like, even from a financial side, I've been told they're losing $30-40 million a year. And I know they're now stripping away all their salaries and trading away all the
and now the issue is that they thought they had a pretty good setup possibly to get a new arena, but then I'm hearing that's not going to come to pass. So now they've got this new arena thing that I think they were counting on. So what happens? Do they Houston? Is that our best guess?
I think, I mean, it's been proven in Vegas that, if you've got a quality product and you promote it properly, it doesn't matter where you are. I mean, the Kings have done that. So in Houston, I mean, they've got the population to support it.
Well, they want a tenant down in Houston. The NBA guy does, but I don't think he wants to own the team. So they'll have to either sell it to somebody who.
Well, the guy that owns it now, he can just transfer it. He can just continue being the owner, right?
Well, he could, but he's a local Arizona guy. And does he have the wherewithal? I mean,
I'm assuming because the NHL has that. Basically, the NHL can act as a bank themselves. They've got the money that the teams can borrow, but again, you're paying interest on that too. So it's really not a long-term solution, but it can get you through it.
Yeah. So we never talked about that too. What an incredible, in addition to being one of the greatest hockey players in NHL history, Mario Lemieux was also a shrewd businessman.
No kidding. Yeah.
He parlayed what was owed to him. He was the largest creditor at the time when the Penguins went bankrupt. And he went to them and said, look, why don't I buy the team and I'll put up my debt as the team? Well, he was going to get, I mean, he was the largest secured creditor, I guess. I guess he was secured. But basically he put up money that he may or may not was going to get, and then ended up being an owner and then walked away with a wheelbarrow full of money when he sold
and made that franchise very successful.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Well, I'm not the only one who said this, but a lot of people said, he saved that franchise twice. He saved it as a player and he saved it as an owner.
Yeah, And he had the big businessman that he brought in with him too. I can't remember what his name was that kind of shot in
he was there at the end with him as well. He's still there. I think he's still going to be one of the owners as well.
I agree.
Morris is it Belzberg? Belzig?
I can't remember what it was.
Yeah, it's terrible. At the senior moments, we're having them.
Brain damage. Yeah, it's funny because when you can't remember that, I can't remember either. Yeah.
Well, I was actually my loss of names, having covered it, that was worrying me at one point. And so I actually asked my doctor about it, who I had, he'd been my doctor for 30 years, and he actually laughed at it. He goes, losing names, that's not Alzheimer's, that's just getting old. Because that's what I lose. I lose names.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I just, I'll remember it 10 minutes later.
I guess I do that too. Yeah.
Yeah, the name just doesn't come to you. It doesn't roll off there. I mean, I don't lose Wayne Gretzky's name or Mario Lemieux's name, but the third liner.
It's funny. I'm thinking about that too because there's been times when we've been talking. I can't remember Matt Duchene's name. I don't know why that name is hard for me because I talk about him a lot. I'm critical of him. But for some reason, when we get talking about Nashville, I draw blanks sometimes.
Well, the other funny thing that I do is the first names. Like if it's somebody, if someone who has the same last name,
the Kings,
if you went to high school with the John Duchene, and so instead of saying Matt, you say John Duchene, and I've done that a couple of times. Recently, even where it's just people that I know. I got the last name right, but I don't have the first name right. So
that's good.
Anyway,
how was your wife doing? She was sick there for a while. How's she feeling?
Well, she was good. I mean, it was just bronchitis. It wasn't the vid, as they call it in the NHL. The vid.
Did they call it the vid?
I've heard it referred to that.
When I played, like the minor league guys and other people would call the NHL the show.
Yeah.
But when I played we never called it the show.
Yeah.
It's weird that people had all these kind of.
Well, to me, that was more baseball. It was a baseball thing. I mean, I've heard it in the NHL as well, but in baseball, guys, you call it the show. If you're watching baseball movies, and the guys are in the minds, we got to get to the show. So all that kind of stuff. But anyway, we hope everyone has enjoyed our banter and. This is Wednesday, so we won't be back to talk to you again until next Monday. But if you want to read me, I'm at DetroitHockeyNow.com and also HockeyBuzz.com.
And again, if you want to listen to the radio version of the show, you can go to radio.co at 365 Sports. Everybody have a good weekend. We'll see you on Monday.